This episode of Just Plain Board is brought to you by the good folks at Woodcraft. I'm Chad Stanton, and I'm telling you to get out of woodworking. What do I mean by that? Well, find out that and more on this episode, Just Plain Board. Okay, I don't actually mean stop doing woodworking. On the contrary, I love woodworking, and I want to encourage everyone to get involved. So what I mean to say was, get out of woodworking comfort zones. What's that? Well, let me explain. See, I've been building furniture for 20 years, and in that time, I've done a lot of teaching, instructing, and demos for people. I love to meet new people and see the pictures of the projects they're working on. But more often than not, when I run into that same individual later, it seems their skill level at woodworking is the same as it was the previous year. I started wondering to myself, well, why is this? That's when I realized they've fallen into a woodworking comfort zone. A woodworking comfort zone is just a skill level or technique that one feels safe and can perform it without any stress. So it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or a pro. It can happen to any one of us. So, how does one fall into a woodworking comfort zone? Well, I've broken them down into 4 different categories. Reason 1, time. It's probably fair to say that most of you don't do woodworking as a profession. You probably have a full-time job, and that takes at least 8 hours of the day. Then throw into the mix the wife, the kids, the house chores. You get the idea. The day quickly runs out of time. But when there's a little bit of time, I'm sure you enjoy working in your shop. Now, most people want to be able to complete a project in a reasonable amount of time. Therefore, it's a simple formula. A little bit of time equals a simple made project. It's a pattern that tends to repeat itself. People normally don't want to waste their time experimenting on something and then it fails. We tend to do what we know works. Hence, the comfort zone develops. I would say time is the number one reason that most people fall into a comfort zone. The second reason, tools. This goes along with reason 1. Money is something that everyone's in need of. It always seems that there's never enough of it. The kids need new shoes, the mortgage payment is due, or just the unexpected breakdown of the car. Money is needed to take care of everything. If the majority of our money goes towards necessities, it's sometimes difficult to buy the tools on our wish list. And most of us believe the more tools we have means being able to do more in the shop, or at least do more in a shorter amount of time. So the lack of tools becomes our second reason people fall into a comfort zone. The third reason, inspiration. Finding something to truly motivate and inspire someone to strive to do something new, it doesn't happen often. Well, I'll use myself for an example here. For years now, I've been wanting to build a Chippendale-style lowboy. I have the books, the plans, even the material to do it. But it seems such like an involved and challenging project that I have yet been able to sacrifice the time to do it. I say this because I don't think I'm any different from anyone else. We can see pictures online, watch videos, go through books, but it really has to be something that we need or repeatedly nagged about before we actually take necessary steps to push ourselves into doing something new and different. Human nature is we tend to put things off. Notice I just used reason 1 for not starting that project. Another thing I discovered was back when I was a contributing editor for American Woodworker magazine. I worked for them for 4 years, and I noticed a lot of the projects seemed to be similar in many ways. It kind of felt like we were repeating ourselves. I was amazed to learn that the number one reason people bought the magazine was for the plans. It turns out that many woodworkers could not just look at a picture and figure out on their own the dimensions or what type of joinery was used. So although they might like it and mildly wish to make a new project, they may not because of the lack of information provided, which brings us to the 4th woodworking comfort zone. Technique, or the lack of it. Let's say that you finally decided to push yourself into making a new and more challenging project. We have the plans, the materials, the tools, but you have realized that the project requires some fancy joinery. Having never done this joinery, practice must be done first. That practice is going to consist of many sloppy and ugly joints. It takes a lot of patience and concentration to successfully execute a good joint. And this can be a lot of work, which, again, goes back to reason one. At this point, I think it's fair to say that all of us fall into at least one of these comfort zones. So, how do we get out of them? I have a few suggestions that just might help. Let's begin with the topic of tools. I always tell people, for every project, buy at least one new tool. It doesn't have to be an expensive tool. I mean, a $5 tool will do. But if you take this approach, before long, you'll have a tool selection that will even make a woodcraft store jealous. Also, when you buy tools, buy the best tool you can afford. Let's say that you saved, $500 to purchase a new table saw. When you go shopping, you'll see table saws from $100 to $2,000. Don't think, oh, I'll buy the $100 one and then I can buy other tools with my money left over. I highly don't recommend this. The old saying, you get what you pay for, is true. A cheaper saw will vibrate more, it'll be loud, and it'll be less accurate. If you don't enjoy using your tools, you'll shy away from them. And if you don't use them, well, what's even the point of owning them? With that being said, you don't have to buy the $2,000 saw just because it's better built than the $500 one. Don't go into debt for buying your tools, especially if it's just a hobby. You can always sell the old tools and later upgrade to newer, nicer ones in the future. The more tools make the job easier, faster, and helping you get out of that comfort zone. Next is inspiration. As we said, books, videos, online pictures, they're all great ways to get our juices flowing. But when we run into that problem of dimensions and joinery, well, then what? I would suggest investing in a few books that teach about furniture design. There are some online videos out there that give basic furniture design, but I always like having a book that I can refer to when I need a refresher point or two. Now, I'll give a list of my favorite books in another episode, but in the meantime, I suggest going to your local library and checking out books there first. Once you found a book that you like, you can probably purchase it at a woodcraft store or somewhere else online. I highly encourage everyone to build up a woodworking library, even if it's a library of woodworking books that are online. Once you get the keys to basic designing, you can use SketchUp to design 3D images on your computer. You can download SketchUp for free, and there are tons of free videos out there to teach you how to use SketchUp. Last for design, I sometimes like to build small-scale versions of the project out of foam core or scraps of wood. It's nothing too detailed, just something that's hot glued together. This actually helps me more than the 3D drawings. Now, furniture design is a whole nother subject that I could cover at a later date, but this should be enough to get you going in the right direction. So technique is the big one. Developing your technique will take your skill level from fair to great. Now, some ways to develop your technique are through books, magazines, blogs, videos, classes. But there's a couple things to consider in these options. Blogs and websites, well, they're great because you can access them almost anywhere and they're free. But how thorough are they? The author who wrote the blog, is he truly experienced? Has that person perfected the technique, or did they just get lucky on the first try and then publish it online? A book, on the other hand, goes through a lot more fact-checking. I can personally say that I have a book coming out later this year, and that after I wrote it, my editor corrected things. Then he sent it to a second editor, and then that's being triple-checked then by a third editor before it comes back to me for a final check. Now, that's a lot of checking. It's not to say that mistakes won't still happen, but the odds are certainly cut down. Oh, And those 3 editors, I might also say that they have a background and knowledge in woodworking. So it's just not grammar they're correcting. Now, videos are great and help tremendously. It's the one reason that I do YouTube, is to help show people woodworking. But it's not exactly teaching. It's more like a glorified demonstration. However, when I do teach a class, I can customize my skill to the needs of the student. This helps fine-tune their technique to assure a successful outcome of what they're trying to perform. For instance, I can watch a student that's having difficulty sawing. I can do something as simple as moving their elbow in or adjusting their foot, and it can make all the difference. Now, you don't get that kind of personal attention in a video. Taking a class truly helps a student much better than any video. But keep in mind, not every skilled woodworker is a good teacher. Some are good at what they do, but not when it comes to clear, easy explanations. That's why I developed a series of classes that teaches a student not only good woodworking techniques, but it also teaches them how to make just about anything they see using minimal tools. But that's for another episode. Last point on technique is a simple exercise. I suggest doing warm-ups before actually working on your project. I mean, think about it. A runner usually stretches before running. An artist will draw circles and lines to loosen up. Shouldn't we do the same? I recommend doing 15 to 20 minutes of a simple joint before starting on your project. Practice making a tenon or one dovetail, or even just trying to cut some straight lines with a handsaw. This technique will do 2 things. 1, it'll cause us to focus before we actually start on our project. And 2, before long, you'll master whatever that technique is and improve your skill level. Okay, the last comfort zone is actually our first one, time. Now, this is a subject I cannot give advice on. Everyone has priorities in life. I can't tell you how much time you're supposed to be spending in the shop. But having good skills requires a lot of time invested. And so finding your comfort zone solutions for this one, well, that's entirely up to you. Well, I hope you enjoyed and learned something from this episode. If you have any further questions on this subject or any other woodworking subject, please feel free to email me at stantonfinefurniture@gmail.com. On behalf of myself and Safety Dan, we want to ask you to go dance now, people.